Good afternoon. My name is Amit Singh, and in this class of Indian economy, we are dealing with a very important topic that is the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy forms one of the foundation of the Indian economy or the working of the economy. It deals with or it is linked with the concept public finance. Public finance, which is a branch of economics and deals with the management of public resources. Now, this management is being done by the government with the motive of achieving the fulfillment of the public need, as well as, of course, the universal objective, that is to have the faster economic growth and development. So, there the objective behind to have this management is to fulfill the public needs and requirement. And of course, I've told you we're having a universal objective for any economy, that is to have the faster economic growth and development. Now, as per this public needs are concerned, we're having certain primary needs which are required to be given by the government to their public, that can be studied in the way of fed me, like this F stands for providing or provisioning for the food security. This E stands for education, having the qualitative education plus also having the creation of employment. D stands, of course, D is quite important for you, because now if you see the current geopolitical scenario, so there this D is having their huge role, that is a defense supply. So we are talking about provisioning for the defense also. Okay. So now the government also increased the defense expenditure almost by 12%, reaching to 7.8 lakh crore. The reason is to have the self-reliant in case of defense production is concerned, also form one of the basic need to the people of any country. Now, M stands for having the quality medical facilities. And I, of course, we know that I stands for, again, a very important, that is I is for infrastructure. Having good standard infrastructure, the structure which can attract the investment to a particular region. And recently we have seen that in Uttar Pradesh, our Prime Minister has inaugurated Ganga Expressway, which is almost 597 kilometers long, joining Meerut and Prayagraj. Okay, so why it is so, why this expressway actually made over there? The reason is to attract more investment over that particular belt, which is usually remain in dearth of the investment. We know that without infrastructure, no investment will be attracted over that particular part. So that is how we talk about the infrastructure first, and then to think about to attract the investment over the particular region. So these are the primary needs which actually been given by the provision for which actually been made by the government under this public need or the public finance. But the thing is, how this all been done by the government? Now, in case of how it has been done by developing, by making certain economic policies, or there the government come up with some primary economic policies, and some of the important policies include government economic policies, two of which forms the primary policies. The first one, I'll go with the monetary policy. Again, very important policy which actually been maintained by the government of India. And the second one is fiscal policy. What we have to discuss in this particular class. But before moving into this particular topic, fiscal policy, I just give you a little gist about this monetary policy also. The word itself defined about the policy, that it is related to the something linked with the money. Okay, it talks about the money supply. Okay, right. So there the government is bound to maintain a balanced money supply in the economy. Suppose this is the money supply. Okay, so this money supply should not be in excess or in deficit, of course, or low. It should be maintain a balance over here. Okay, why it is so? If this remain in excess, suppose if the money supply in the market, the money what we're having in our pocket, if this increases, then what we are requiring in that case, that link to the problem of high inflation, which is having some direct impact over the public, or you can say berozgari maar dalegi. So in that we were having the high inflation, which is quite problematic for the public, for the economy in fact. Now if there is dearth in the supply of money, then what we are requiring, or we're having low money supply, suppose this one is excess and this part demarcating the low money supply, in that case the economy is now having the lesser money supply than what we are requiring. It may lead to lesser investment, low or decrease in investment. Now remember this part, it is this investment which help us in creating the employment opportunities, decreasing the poverty, and also able to increase the production in the country itself. Okay, so we are requiring more investment to have more production, to have more employment opportunities, and to decrease the poverty, to achieve the various goals which are there with the government. Okay, right. So both are problematic to us. So for that, the government maintain a policy, make a policy to maintain the proper money supply in the market. Since it is a very specialized job, so it is being managed by a specialized body, that is central bank of any country is there to maintain the money supply. In case of India, it is RBI, that is the Reserve Bank of India. It is this expert body which maintain the money supply in the market with the help of monetary policy, right? So this again a very important policy, because it is the money which more an important, it's working as an engine for the performance of any economy. Now we get into the part of our topic, that is the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy. So I've told you it is this policy which help us to manage the public resources. Okay. Now this policy deals with the receipt and expenditure, the spending part of the government, expenditure of the government. Okay, right? So how the government is going to spend money in the economy, and how they are going to make up the fund for this kind of spending, is all been explained in this policy called as fiscal policy. So for that, for making the spending, for making the expenditure, for achieving the various tasks, various objective of an economy, the government formulate this policy. And in this policy only, the government also talk about from what all sources the government is going to collect the fund to meet out the expenditure that is going to make in the economy for the coming time period, usually a financial year. Right. So it is a statement that deals with the receipt and the expenditure of the government for the coming financial year. Now this follows this fiscal policy include, okay, so primarily it is the policy that deals with the income and expenditure. In fact, instead of income, it's good to say the receipt, because income forms one of the part of receipt or the receiving of the fund. So income is one of the part of the total fund what the government may receive in the coming time. Okay, in a particular time period. So income is a part. So instead of writing income over here, we simply put the word receipt. It's an umbrella term using or covering all the sources from which the government may have may fulfill the requirement of their fund for meeting out the expenditure. Okay. Now this fiscal policy includes the government expenditure pattern. I've told you it's about the expenditure first. Expenditure pattern, that is how the government is going to spend money in the economy for having the faster economic growth and development and achieving the other given objectives. Second is, it also talks about the income, that is the taxation structure. Okay. So how the government is going to collect the fund, charging taxes over the public and the businesses. Third one, it also talks about investment and disinvestment and disinvestment strategy. Strategy, right? So even this also becomes the part of fiscal policy, that where the government is going to invest their fund and from which all ventures the government is going to take out their fund. Okay. So investing in a particular venture is called as investment, and taking the fund from the particular venture, okay, is actually called as disinvestment. Okay. So what is the strategy linked with the government's investment and disinvestment for the coming time period is actually also forms a part of the fiscal policy of the government. Okay. Now the fourth one is again an important one, because that also contributes a big chunk into the funds of government for spending money in the various schemes and ventures. Okay. And that is the borrowing part. Okay. It also talks about the borrowing program of the government, because if the government is not able to meet out the spending from the available sources, in that case the government may also go for borrowing money from various sources like financial institutions or from the various economies too. It may borrow money from various economies like South Korea, Japan. They may ask to come over here and invest their money in the form of borrowing, of course. Okay. In various ventures. So this also talks about the borrowing programs of the government. So this all actually covers under this particular plan that is called as fiscal policy of the government. So we go further. Now, of course, the main objective objectives behind this fiscal policy. So there, the democratic government usually have some objective for spending the money or collecting the money from the public, and the primary objective is, of course, we are having a very you can say broad term what we use to explain this objective. That is, we're having faster to have the faster economic growth and development. Okay. Now this forms the ultimate objective for any economy. They want to have the fastest economic growth as well as the economic development. Okay, right? The first objective to have the faster economic growth and development. Apart from that, we also have number of more objectives which forms the part of this economic growth and development. For example, we're having price stability, increase in employment opportunities, or to decrease poverty poverty level. Okay. To have the proper supply in the market, to have social justice, sustainable development, green development, green growth and development we're having. And we can also have recently in our budget, if you go with the budget of 2026-27, they were having Viksit Bharat as one of the objective. Viksit Bharat, Bharat by 2047 again forms one of the objective. So now the government will invest money in the economy by putting this particular objective to make the Bharat Viksit, or to have the developed India by 2047. Okay, so these are the primary or the basic objectives which the government usually have in their mind while developing by forming the fiscal policy. I think for some of you who are new to this subject economics, could it possible this fiscal policy might be alien to you? In fact, this word might be new to you, but you may understand this particular fiscal term or the policy when I'll go with the other name of this policy. Okay, right? Now it is the same policy which is known with other name. Okay, and the other name of this policy is the budgetary policy. Now you might be able to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, it is also called as budgetary policy. So we all make a budget for the coming time period. Of course, it could be a month, it could be a quarter, or it could also be a year. Of course, we develop a budget, how we are going to spend our limited resources, okay, to fulfill the maximum requirement. So we develop this policy, which can be fiscal policy, can also be called as budgetary policy. That means we are talking about the concept called as budget. So fiscal policy is nothing but it's all about the budget, in fact. So every individual makes the budget for how they are going to meet out their spending. In fact, in the same way, every government also makes the plan for the coming financial year and develop a policy or plan in the form of fiscal policy, can also be termed as budget. Okay, right? So now we get into the concept called as budget. So they were having the topic budget. So now what is budget? Now budget, actually this word is having the origin from a French word, that is baguette, which stands for a wallet, or a leather bag, which is used for carrying money or the documents. Okay, right? So from there we are having the origin of this important exercise that is called as budget. Okay, now budget forms a very important exercise for any government, because we know that it talks about money, and without money no government can implement their policies and plans. So it forms the primary objective to have a proper budget, or having a proper budgeting, to develop a proper fiscal policy. Okay, so in this way we're having this origin of the word budget, that is from baguette. We're having the origin, which stands for the leather bag, which is used for carrying the budget document, or can also be known as wallet, which is used for carrying the money. Now dear, if we talk about the basic definition of budget, okay, now this budget is a comprehensive, statement that deals with the receipt and expenditure of the government for the coming financial year. It deals with the income and expenditure, or I prefer to use the word receipt, covering all the sources of the funds the government is going to have, receipt and expenditures, or the spending the government is going to make, expenditure of the government. Okay, and that is for the planning is made for the future, and there this budget is been made for the coming financial year. Usually it has been made for the coming financial year. So there we are developing this budget for the coming financial year, because plan usually been made for the future. Okay, right? So they were having a fixed time period, and the time period is one financial year. And in case of India, the financial year starts from 1st April till 31st of March next year. Okay, so this forms the financial year for budgeting in our country. So we go further. I think you are very much able to understand what we are talking over here. Now, this is a very important exercise I've already made you know for the government of any country. If you go with the case of India, though it is a very important exercise, but nowhere in the Constitution of India we have used the word budget. But instead of that, we have used the word there in the Constitution of India under article under article 112. We have used the term annual financial statement. So instead of budget, there we have used more technical terminology over here, that is annual financial statement. Financial statement. Or AFS. Now, for the central government, we're having the provision under Article 112. There we have talked about the introduction of annual financial statement to be presented in front of the both the houses of the parliament. Okay, so this is given under the Article 112 as per the central government is concerned, and for the state government, this article, AFS is there under the Article 202. Okay, so for the state government, it has been mentioned under the Article 202, which talks about the presentation of annual financial statement in the legislature. Okay, so now if you talk about this exercise as per the various democratic governments are concerned, so this budgeting actually emerged in the initial phase of 18th century. And if you go with the case of India, this budget, the first budget of India was presented in the year 1860. Okay, it was in this year when the first budget of India was presented, and it was done by a very famous personality and economist named as James Wilson. James Wilson. So this he was a very famous personality. He was an economist. He was a famous economist in Europe, of course. Okay, so he came in our country and become the part of become the finance member of the council of Secretary of State. Okay, so earlier we don't have the legislature, but having a small council which were used to advise the Secretary of State how they have to work. Okay, so in this we're having the finance member. Okay, so this James Wilson become the finance member in the council of Secretary of State. Okay, and that time he had presented the first budget for the country India. Now, along with the economist, I think this person was quite famous. He was the one who has promoted the chartered bank for India, China, and Australia. Chartered bank. So he was the promoter of chartered bank, which later merged with Standard Bank and become Standard Chartered Bank. See the kind of personality he was. And he was also known for introduction of known as the promoter of a very famous magazine named as The Economist. I'm giving this all tidbits so that you can able to in fact regain the name of James Wilson. So he was a very famous personality. So with this all attributes, you can easily memorize the name of James Wilson. okay, who had presented the first budget of India. Now it is about the time when India was a colony of British Empire. So if you talk about the first budget of free India, that is in 1947. Okay, so the first budget of free India was presented by the first finance minister of free India, and his name was R. K. Shanmukham. Shanmukham Chetty. So he was the first finance minister of free India who presented the first budget of free India on November on 26th November 1947. So on this day he presented the first budget. But one more thing, the time India become independent, so most of the part actually still not joined the Union of India. They were almost 500 plus princely state during 1947, the time we have got the independence. There were almost 500 plus princely state who had planned not to join the Union of India. They planned to remain independent. Okay, so in on 15th of August 1947, India was not yet gained the actual territory what we're having now, because most of the princely state planned to remain independent. Okay, so it was in 1949 or 50, in fact, when most of the princely state joined with the Union of India. Okay, right? So in that case, you can say it was in 1949, 1950. It was a time when the finance minister was John Mathai. John Mathai. He was the second finance minister of free India. John Mathai was there. Again, a quite famous personality. So it was this person who has presented the first budget of United India. So by that time, almost most of the princely state were forcefully been merged with the Union of India because of the effort of Sardar Patel. So we're having the first budget of United India, so which was including the financial statement of these all princely state also, was presented by John Mathai in the year 1949-50. I have told you he was also a quite famous personality. First of all, he was the second finance minister of India, and he was also remained as the first railway minister of India. Okay, he was the first railway minister of India. Along with that, he also became the first chairperson of SBI when this SBI was you can say established in the year 1955. Apart from that, his nephew was also a very famous personality known for the introduction of white revolution in India, and his name was Virgis Kurian. Okay, so Virgis Kurian was the nephew of John Mathai. You know, by these all linking of the fact, you can able to remain, you can memorize the name of these all personalities which may come in your exam. So this is some tidbits. I'll go with some more. Now, the responsibility of presenting the budget usually remain in the hands of finance minister of the country. Okay, but there are times when this responsibility moves into the hand of prime minister. Okay, which actually happens thrice when we start from 1947. In case of free India, it happens thrice when any prime minister presented the budget for the country. Okay, first time it happens in the year 1958 when Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru become the first prime minister to present the budget in the parliament. Okay, so he presented the first budget as the prime minister. Okay, after the resignation of T.T. Krishnamachari, TTK. This is again a very famous brand having the product, having the brand named as Prestige. Okay, so TTK is the name of a company also, which was introduced by this person only, TT Krishnamachari. So there he was the finance minister. He resigned, and thereafter the responsibility moves into the hand of the prime minister, and he became the first prime minister to present the budget as a prime minister of India. Second happens this, all three times when a prime minister presented the budget, actually in fact it was the Gandhi family which has hold this opportunity of presenting the budget, being the prime minister of India. Second time it happens in the year 1970 when Indira Gandhi presented the budget as a prime minister of India. Okay, it was the time when Morarji Desai resigned from the post of finance minister. So the responsibility moves into the hand of into the hands of then prime minister Indira Gandhi. Okay, so in 1970 it was Indira Gandhi who presented the budget, being the prime minister of India. I think Morarji Desai, who was the finance minister. Desai is the finance minister. You can say he was the person who has presented the budget maximum times. So he has presented the highest number of times as per the presentation of budget is concerned. So 10 times he has presented the budget in the Parliament of India. Now, if we go with the numbers of budget presented by the present finance minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, so she has presented 9 times budget. Okay, right? Whereas in case of Morarji Desai, he was the person who has presented maximum or the highest number of times budget in the Parliament of India. So now in budgeting, 2017, this year is also having some importance. Okay, so before 2017, or you can say from 1924 till 2017, it was the time period when we were having the dual budgeting system. Dual budgeting, that means in this time period we were having two budget. One is the general budget for every other departments. Okay, and other was we're having the separate railway budget. Railway budget. So that time we used to have dual budgeting in this time period, and in 2017 the government of India merged the railway budget into the general budget only. So now we are having single budgeting system, single budget. So these are some of the fact. There's one more fact. It was in 2021 when this budgeting system of India become paperless. So now we are no more having the paper being used for the purpose of making budget. So now we are having the paperless budget. Paperless budget introduced in the year 2021. The motive is to make this budgeting more green, more of course without in fact destroying the forest. Okay, so we're having the paperless budget. Now these are the basic facts or the tidbits what we should know as per the budgeting of India is concerned. Now we go with more, we can go with some more in-depth study of budget. Okay, so I'll just go with the components of budget. So we go with the next topic, the components of budget. Okay, now getting into this topic, component of budget, we first we have to cover some basic facts linked with the component of budget, so that you can have a proper understanding of this concept of budget. Now, the base in this basic fact, we include the first one is we should know the understanding or the meaning of assets and liabilities. Okay. We also know the meaning of receipt, what I'd already made you know somewhat. Okay. So these are the terms which you'll see will emerge a number of time when we deal with the components of budget. Okay. So how can we define this asset? Now, in case of asset, asset can be any object or commodity which can be used for earning income. Okay, so anything which can be used for earning income, it can also be your skill which can be used for earning income. So skill can also become the asset of a person if it has been utilized for the purpose of earning income. So anything which can be used for earning income is actually forms the part of your assets, right? Or which can be changed into cash. So anything which can be sold off and changed into cash, or can be utilized for clearing out your loans, your past liabilities, can be termed under the category of asset. Suppose we're having a land or building, it can be sold off, can be changed into cash, or to meet out our past liabilities. Okay, comes under the category of asset. Anything which can be used for earning income or can be sold off to and cash, can be changed into cash, can be changed into rupees, of course, can be called or put under the category of liability of assets. Now, if you go with the second concept, that is liabilities. Okay, so anything which create the obligation to pay back, to return back, falls under the category of liabilities. What we have to return back, suppose if I have borrowed a bike from my friend, I need to return back. So this forms my liability, that this is not belongs to me but borrowed from my friend. So it is the liability of mine, what I have to return back. Okay, right? So it is the liability. So anything which create the liability or the obligation to pay back, okay, return back, comes under the category of liability. For example, if someone has taken the loan, or you can say borrowings in case of the government, so all the borrowings which is creating the obligation to return back, or all the money which is coming to the kitty of the government, having the obligation to pay back, forms the part of liabilities. Great. So these two terms are quite been used a number of time when we cover the components of budget. Okay, now we are having the receipt also. So in case of receipt, there we include all the sources of fund which can be utilized by an individual, and here in case of the government, for collecting the fund. Okay, right? So there it talks about the sources of the money or the funds. Okay, so all the sources. For example, I'll go with the example here. In case of receipt, okay, right? So any individual, or in case of government, may have a number of sources to collect the fund. Okay, and these sources can be categorized into three. Like first one, we're having the earning sources. Earning. So first way to collect the fund, to make the spending, to make our expenditures fulfilled. Okay, so first one is the earning source. Okay, right? So we have to utilize this source, of course. For any individual, we're having we may have a number of having a number of earning source. What we should have, if somebody is working in some organization, it this person may be getting the salary. Okay, or he may have invested the money in some share market, so there he may be getting the dividends. Okay, also having invested in some kind of venture, for that he may having the share in the profit. Okay, have given money to someone or invested in the bank, for that he might be getting the interest. Okay, so in this way he may have the rental income. So these are some of the way a person can earn. In the same way, the government is also having multiple sources for earning. Okay, so like salary, there the income can be come in the form of taxes. Okay, so it is earning the income in the form of taxes. So they are having a number of taxes, like they are having income tax, corporation tax, GST is there. So there are direct indirect taxes are there, which can be act as a source of income of the government, comes under the category of earning. Second, it may have dividend also. Okay, so it may be having the shares of a number of company, we're having a number of PSUs. So there, from those all PSUs, the government may having the dividend. Okay, or they may have some departmental companies, like we're having railway. Even RBI also provide the profit to share the profit with the government. Okay, because government is the owner of RBI. If RBI earns something in the form of profit, required to be shared with the government. So there the government is getting the profit from various departmental organizations. Okay, in the same way, the government might have given the loan to uh, some companies, some FIs, or government or institutions, of course. So for that, the government may having the interest. Okay, so this all forms the earning source of the government. The second way of getting the funds, okay, is of course the sale of assets or disinvestment, investment. Right, suppose if you're investing something, some money, of course, first of all you try to utilize the money what you're getting from these all earning sources. Now if it is not able to fulfill the requirement, then in that case you plan to sell some asset. Okay, so what all asset you are having, you may sell off and have the fund for your investments. Okay, so second way for having the seed, for having the fund, is of course the sale of asset. And if these two are unable to fulfill the requirement of your spending or the expenditure, in that case you may also plan out for some borrowing. So the individual and government may have a number of way of borrowing, of course, like they can go to banks. So in the same way, the government can go to some kind of financial institution. It can be national, domestic, or can be international. So from there, the government may borrow the money. So government can borrow money from public also by issuing the treasury bills and bonds, public FIs. It may borrow money from the economies, may ask their funding for a particular project from Germany. We're having Germany, Japan, South Korea. They are more interesting funding the projects of our country. So we can ask those all economies to come over here, invest, or simply go for the borrowing. Okay. So there are also a number of sources for both government and individual from where they can have the borrowing. Right. So there are three, you can say, primary regions from where we can collect the fund, comes under the category of receipts. So what all money coming in this way, in the form of earnings, in the form of disinvestment or sale of assets, and also by planning the borrowing. Okay, what money will comes under the category of this particular receipt. Okay, right. So these terms are very required to be understood by you, in fact, just to understand the concept of budgeting. Now we go with our part, the component of budget, components. Now, so primarily we divide the budget into two part. Okay, in the first part we include the total receipt, and there we're having total expenditure. Okay, I'll go with the receipt first. Now it is having two subdivision. One is revenue receipt, and second one is capital receipt. In the same way, we're having two subdivision under this also. We're having revenue expenditure and also having capital expenditure. So now we are very much aware about the terms receipt and expenditure, or the spending part, where the government is going to spend money, and this is the part from where the government is going to have the money. Okay, but they were having two new terms, revenue and capital. Okay, right? So if we go with the receipt part, that means the government is about to receive the fund from various sources, and we have to segregate this all fund under these two accounts, whether we have to put a part of fund under the category of revenue receipt, or we have to put under the category of capital receipt. Okay, right? So for that, we're having certain standards. On the basis of those all standards, we categorize the funds coming to the government under revenue account or the capital accounts. Okay, so what are these standards? In case of revenue receipt, okay, the first standard is, okay, that forms more a litmus paper standard, okay, or test, you can say, whether the fund what the government is about to receive is having any influence over the assets or liability or not. Okay, right? So if there is no influence over assets or liabilities of the government, I just write in this way. No influence over the assets or liability of the government. In that case, we put this fund under the category of revenue account or revenue receipt account. Okay, so this money is not having any influence over the assets or liability of the government. That means there neither the government is selling of any asset or borrowing the money from various sources. Okay, neither the government is selling the asset, not borrowing the money. If that is so, the money will put under the category of revenue receipt. Okay, right? So this is the money what the government get by performing. Second, just a minute. Now this is the fund which the government get by performing day-to-day activities. Right? So there the government perform day-to-day activities, like we're having revenue department or the tax department is there. So there the revenue department, the duty of this tax department is to collect the tax. In the same way, we're having a number of we're having judiciary also. So there the judiciary perform its duty, and there it may collect some kind of fees and fines. Okay, so this all departments are performing their daily duties, of course, and earning the income. Okay, forms the part of revenue receipt. Okay, so tax department collect the tax. Okay, so they were having a number of PSUs also, they perform their duties. I'm to say a number of departments are there, they perform their duties, and by performing their duties, they earn the money, they collect the money. Okay, right? So by performing day-to-day duties, activities, there the money is comes under the category of revenue receipt. Now you can say it's more a recurring income, it's more a regular income, because they are performing their duties and receiving the income. Now the last part is there these receipts does not create any obligation to pay back. Okay, right? Does not create obligation to return. So there the tax department is earning the money by collecting the taxes, taking the taxes from the individual or the company or the companies. So without having any obligation to pay back in the future. Okay, the tax which actually been collected by the tax authorities are not required to be paid back to the taxpayers. Okay, it can be a company, it can also be an individual. Okay, so these money does not get any kind of obligation to return back. Okay, if that is so, then all these funds which are simply fulfilling this all requirement, this all standards put under the accounts of revenue receipt. Now we just categorize this revenue receipt also. Receipt, it includes tax revenue receipts or taxable revenue receipts and non-tax revenue receipt. Okay, so there we are having more divisions of tax revenue receipt also, in the way the tax uh, can be divided into two, in the form of direct tax and indirect tax. So this may include income tax. Some examples are income tax, corporation tax, security transaction tax, etc. Okay, or we may also have wealth tax. Form some of the example of tax revenue receipts. In the same way, over here we're having a very important tax, that is goods and service tax, excise duty, or we are having earlier we used to have service tax, etc. So they all forms the example of tax receipt. Okay. Now in case of non-tax revenue, if you go with the case of non-tax revenue, so there we include fees and fines, stamp duties, interest received for the loans given by the government. Apart from that, we also include like we're having yes, we're having dividends and profit from various PSUs. Okay, so these are certain example which are there received by the government in the form of non-taxable revenue receipt. Now we just analyze the another part of receipt, that is the capital receipt. Now all the receipts which are not fulfilling these all standard, okay, comes under the category of capital receipt. How do so? I just go with the new page over here. Capital receipts. Okay. Now the first one is the receipt which are having the influence over the assets or liability. Influence assets or liabilities of the government, then we put this all funds under the category of capital receipt. How to so? Suppose if the fund is coming either by selling the asset of the government, so there the government has sold off the assets. It could be in the form of land and building, could be in the form of shares or debentures. Of course, in that case, there the government is selling their assets through which they can earn money, okay, and receiving the funds, or the government has borrowed the money. In that case, if that is so, then we put all this fund under the category of capital account of the receipt. Okay, so there it is influencing, either it is increasing or decreasing the assets or increasing the liabilities. If that is so, then we put the fund under the category of capital receipt. Now these receipts are not the regular income, not regular income or the sources. So once you have sold off the asset, then the fund what we have received is the one time fund. It will not generate year after year as we go in the case of taxes. So every month, every year we are having the generation of this fund, okay, where it is not getting any kind of obligation. So there in this case it is not a regular income as we are having the case of taxes. Okay, now the third one is the maximum part create the repayment obligation. If you go with the case of India, so there the maximum part of it actually comes in the form of borrowing, so developing the repayment obligation, which required to pay back along with the interest most of the case in future. So there it is creating the repayment obligation. So I'll just make you know the major part what the government is having in the form of capital receipt is creating the repayment obligation. It's very small part of this receipt, capital receipt, which is not required to be paid back, mostly come in the form of sale of asset or disinvestment. I show you. I'll go further with this part. Okay. Now, this capital receipt, go with the next page only. Capital receipt can be divided into two. How? First one is we include non-debt. Debt here stands for loan. Non-debt creating, non-debt capital receipt, CR. Okay, and the second one is debt creating, loan creating, liability creating capital receipts. Somewhat already we had discussed this part. So under this we include sale of assets. So that the asset been sold off and we receive the fund, the government received the fund. So this fund is need not to be paid back from whom we have we can say we have gained the fund by selling the assets. Okay, second one we covers disinvestment. And in this case, the one which is creating the burden loan over the government, okay, so it covers all the borrowing aspects, all the borrowing. Okay, right? So remember this part is quite important for you. Under this capital receipt, we're having two part: non-debt capital receipt or debt creating capital receipt. Okay, so this debt stands for all the borrowing what we're having, which is creating the repayment obligation. That is the borrowing part. Okay. Now, if you go with this capital receipt part, if you go with the current budget, almost 99% of the capital receipt forms a part of borrowing. Right? Suppose the capital receipt is almost, I think, 12 lakh crore something. Okay, out of that, 99% forms the part of borrowing itself. Just 1% or 2% forms a part of this non-debt capital receipt. So we just fastly cover the next part also, which is quite important. We go with the expenditure part. Now see this expenditure. Okay, so we have seen that the budget is having two part. One is receipt and second one is expenditure. We had already covered the receiving part, from where the funds are going to come. Then we go with the spending part in the same way as what we have seen in case of receipt. We're having the expenditure, we're having revenue expenditure, and we also have capital expenditure. Okay, so there, in case of revenue expenditure, we covers all the spending which are there to run the government, to perform day-to-day activities. Okay, made expenditure made for performing day-to-day activities, or to run the government, to run the departments, to run the departments, to perform day-to-day activities or to run the departments. Okay, so it is also the also having the recurring nature. So every month they are recurring, every year they are recurring in nature, and having no influence over assets or liabilities. Okay, if that is so, which is not having any influence over the assets or liabilities, we are spending money, neither with that money, neither we are borrowing any asset or we are decreasing any liability, we are paying off any liabilities. If that is so, then we put under the category of revenue receipt. Still we are spending, but neither we're having increase of asset or we're having decrease of liability. Then in that case we put this spending under the revenue account, revenue expenditure account. Okay, so in this we include expenditure, we include the expenditure made on general administration, like in policing, judiciary, to run judiciary, defense, etc. So they all comes under the category of general administration. Expenditure which is made on social and community development. Okay, like in medical field, education, etc. They all comes under the revenue expenditure. So there the government, to have the better education system, required to spend money. Okay, so forms a part of revenue expenditure. Next one, we're having expenditure made in terms for the purpose of economic services. Okay, so in this we include payment which is made by the government in the form of salaries, pension, subsidies, and we're having payment for Yes, again a very important part, interest payment, which contributes a very big chunk as per this expenditure is concerned, almost contributing 20% of the total expenditure made, usually been made by the government. 20% has been taken up or moved in the form of interest payment. And the last one is quite important one, that is grants grant given to state government. So grants here stands for the one way movement of, or the unidirectional movement of the fund. That means the fund will be given to the state government without expecting to move back with the to the central government. Okay, so there we are having the one way movement of the fund. So there it has been given to the state government and it will not be returned back to the center in future. I deal with this part in more detail in case of grant, because this is again a very important part. So grants which are being given to the state government, okay, remains the revenue expenditure for the central government, but could be possible it may be utilized for the purpose of creation of assets. So there the state might have gained the funds, and this can be utilized for the purpose of creating the assets for the creation of assets or for other purpose. Okay, so if the fund has been utilized by the state government, what they have received in the form of grant for the purpose of creating asset, and I've told you anything which simply having the influence over the asset should be put under the category of capital expenditure. Okay, so if it is being utilized for creating the asset by the state government, then in that case we take out this part from the revenue expenditure and put under the category of capital expenditure. Okay, and we deal this part. So they were having two divisions over here. One is the grant for the creation of asset and for the other purposes. Okay, so we deal this part when we cover the part of capital expenditure. Then I'll make you know how we deal with this part also. So now these all falls under the category of revenue expenditure, which is not having any influence over the assets or the liability of the government. Okay, so neither we are having increase of asset nor we are having decrease in the burden of liabilities. Now the capital expenditure, okay, the last part of this component of budget. Now in case of capital expenditure, it is having influence over the assets, or liability of the government. Influence assets or liability, that means that the government is spending money either for purchasing the asset or for paying off their past liability, paying off their liabilities. Okay, if the assets has been purchased, it may increase the asset having the influence, or if they have utilized for paying off their past loan, so there the liability might have decreased, so it will be put under the category of capital expenditure. Okay, second standard of this capital expenditure is it is having long term effects. How come? In fact, so suppose if we are having the creation of assets, suppose now we are having Ganga Expressway, so this expressway will lead to the attraction of more investment in this region, and because of investment they were having more production, more companies will come over there and develop their production plants. Okay, and because of that production, first of all they will have increase in the employment opportunities, and in other side it also increase the revenue part of the government. Okay, so because of this production activity, the government may charge a number of taxes in the form of GST, income tax, corporation tax, and that simply increase the revenue of the government in future. So there we're having the long term effect when the government go for the capital expenditure. Okay, right? That means there should be more, and there should be more in fact reduced in the coming future. So they were having long term implications. Okay. So now what all include in this capital expenditure? Firstly, we include the investment part. There the government is investing. Investment. Okay. Where the government is investing, first one, it may go for the investment in infrastructure, infrastructure, or it may go for the creation of a new public sector undertaking, domestic PSU. Okay. So first thing what we cover under the capital expenditure is the investment part. The government is investing money either in infrastructure, creating roads, railway, airport, canals, and a number of things, of course. So in this way, the government is investing and developing the infrastructure or creating some newer PSUs. Second, okay. So in this case, second, we include the distribution of loans. Okay. So there the government may give the soft loan to the state government or certain financial institutions or some PSUs, and for these loans the government may have some interest. It could be lesser interest, of course, but that is generating the income. So anything which generate the income forms a part of asset of the government. So because of distribution of loan, the assets increases, and that is how this distribution of loans to the various institutions and the government forms a part of capital expenditure. Okay. Third one is we include repayment of loans or liabilities. Okay. So there we're having the past loans, we're having some past liabilities what the government has now pay off. Okay. So earlier, suppose I'll go with the example. Suppose in but earlier the government was having the loan of around 1 lakh, and out of that the government has paid off 20,000. Okay. So earlier the burden was of 1 lakh, but because of this repayment of loan of 20,000, this burden got reduced to 80,000. Okay, right? So there we witness the decrease in liability. So in that case, this repayment of loan also comes under the category of capital expenditure. That is how the government makes the capital expenditure under three categories. One is investment, second one is distribution of loan to the various institution and the government, and third one is we're having the repayment of loan. Okay. So that is how this all forms the component of expenditure, and overall it is the component of forms the component of budget. Okay. So in this way we're having the presentation of budget. Now I want to show you one the current budget also. We're having certain, see that. So they were having a glance over the current budget. We're having revenue receipt over here. Okay. And we also have the capital receipt. In this we're having tax revenue receipt and non-tax revenue receipt. Okay. So this is almost contributing, revenue receipt almost contributing 35 lakh crore. So this budget is almost of 53.47 lakh crore. I think there the number might have given, we're having over here. It is the total budgetary estimate of 53 lakh crore. Okay. Out of that, revenue receipt is contributing how much? 35 lakh crore. Okay. So receipt which is not having any influence over the assets or liability of the government. We are having the money without borrowing or without selling the asset. How much it is contributing? Out of 53, 35 forms a part of revenue receipt. In case of capital receipt, so there we also have the capital receipt. Okay. There we are selling the assets or we are borrowing the money. So they were having the borrowing or the liability part. Okay. So it is contributing almost 18.1 lakh crore. Okay, so now the number has got reduced to 1 lakh crore, and out of this the borrowing forms the maximum part, almost 17 out of 18 lakh crore. 17 lakh crore forms the part of borrowing. Okay, that means in this capital receipt, borrowing contributes almost 99%. Just 1% forms a part of recovery of loan or the sale of assets. Now we go with the part of expenditure also. Okay, so they were having the total expenditure. So of course revenue and expenditure, receipt and expenditure almost remain the same. It is the same number, of course. Okay, now revenue expenditure, they were having revenue expenditure account. Okay, how much it is? It is almost 41 lakh crore. Okay, and in case of capital account expenditure, we're having it is almost 12 lakh crore. Okay, 12.2 lakh crore forms the capital expenditure. Okay, just 12 lakh crore what we are spending for the purpose of reducing the liabilities or creating the assets. Okay, so major part has been consumed in the form of revenue expenditure, which is not creating any assets or reducing the liabilities. Okay, we're having capital account contributing 12.2 lakh crore. Now one thing I want to convey you, we had covered the part of grants. They were having the grants. Okay, so grant which are being utilized, which may be utilized by the government, by the state government, for the creation of assets, that the government estimated the number as 5 lakh crore something. Okay, it is 4.92 lakh crore, which could be utilized by the state government for the purpose of creation of asset. So this is almost 5 lakh crore. So what we do, because they were having the creation of asset, it should not be the part of revenue receipt but the part of capital receipt. So they will take out this number, the grant which is been utilized for the purpose of creation of asset, and add with the capital account grants for assets. Okay, now this led to the provisioning of a number which is called as the effective capital expenditure. I'll show you. Okay, right now capital expenditure we had already covered. Expenditure, or can also be called as capex, it is almost 12.2 lakh crore. Okay, now the grants which are utilized by the government, which will be utilized by the government for by the state government for the creation of assets, the number estimated around 4.92 lakh crore. Okay, right? So in all, effective how much we have utilized for the creation of asset. So the effective capex is how much? 12 plus 5, 17, almost 17.1 lakh crore. Okay, so this is forming the effective capital expenditure. We covers all the capital expenditure made by the will be made by the government, plus the grant which could be utilized for the creation of asset. When we add this, we'll get the effective capex, that is 17.1 lakh crore. It is 12.2, this one is 4.92 lakh, almost 5 lakh crore. Clubbing together led to the effective capex, which is 17 lakh crore utilized for the creation of the asset or reducing the liability. I think we had covered all the major aspects of budget. Okay, hoping that you would all have understood this part of fiscal policy as well as the budget. So with that, I just end my lecture over here itself. We cover some other parts in different lectures on different videos. So till that, thank you for so much for your time. Thank you.